This is probably the most horrifying Wet Willies can ever become. Hello everyone and welcome to my review of Doctor Who Series 12 Episode 7, Can You Hear Me? No, that, can you hear me? We good? Yeah, okay. Oh, I'm sorry, that was a lame joke. I'm trying my best, alright? I'm actually kind of tired. I'm actually recording this a little bit later than I'm used to because I was actually at a friend's Oscar party. I mean, Parasite won. How crazy is that? I was not expecting that. I'm very excited about that fact. So just bear with me about the fact that I'm just so excited that Parasite won the Best Picture. That's probably the highlight of this evening, no offense to Doctor Who. But let's actually talk about what you came and clicked on this video for, the episode Can You Hear Me from Doctor Who. Now, I will say, this episode does remind me a little bit of last week's episode, Praxis, in that it feels a little bit forgettable, but I do think it works a lot more than that episode. Mainly, I think the tone of this episode works a lot more for me personally, this psychological, creeping horror vibe. You kind of feel off-kilter throughout the entire thing right from the start with... I really loved the cold open of this episode, which, by the way, we haven't been getting many cold opens in Doctor Who this season. That's kind of strange that we're losing them, and I liked their return here. It was very creepy that this girl that is telling everyone's like, please, you need to protect yourself, and then her nightmares come real. And as we learned, that's basically what it was. Her nightmares were made manifest and affecting others. And I liked that metaphor for mental health, that your mental health does affect you, but it can also start to affect and hurt others, and affect others in a really tangible way. I thought that idea, that concept, was actually quite brilliant and started off being effectively done, but as the rest of this plot sort of got into it and became this plot about immortals fighting each other and immortals fighting each other over love, it kind of started to fall flat for me, not because that idea isn't an interesting one, but because the gods in this episode, the ones that they were sort of hinging this plot around, didn't really have much more emotionally at stake. They kind of were just there like, waha, we're evil and setting the plot off, and then we're gonna quickly be defeated at the end of the episode, just really quickly by the Doctor and the companions. It almost felt just sort of like, hey, yeah, we're just doing this episode so that we can kind of dig more into the psychology of the companion, which was great. I thought that aspect of it, the actual finally digging in and giving some backstory and dissection and character development to all the characters, especially Yaz, who has been sorely lacking in that up until this point, was very well needed and, for the most part, decently done. Not wholly and completely, especially I think in Graham's case, his is kind of the weakest, but there is good story to mine within this creepy immortal whose finger thing was absolutely terrifying, going around and messing with things just for the fun of it. And then also having an ulterior motive of he was trying to manipulate events to try and free his lover, who was also another god who was just messing with people just for the fun of it. And that kind of got her trapped in this sort of cool idea of these planets being mashed together to trap her. And that was the only way that these civilizations could ever stop her. That's actually all really cool stuff, but at the end of the day, the characters didn't really have much more to do than be evil. This could have been a two-parter, honestly, that could have helped us develop these characters into truly fleshed out beings that had more of a motivation other than to be simply evil, because you could have dived into their relationship and their nightmare love thing. But as it is, it really just served more as a vehicle to dive into the characters and left both feeling mostly underserved at the end of the episode. So I really just wish they had had more time to flesh it out, because the concept and everything in here was really strong. It just didn't get enough time to breathe. But speaking on the part that was much stronger in this episode, I loved everything with the companions save for Graham, and I'll get to Graham in a second. First off, I loved seeing Ryan kind of dealing with his friends, and we kind of get this inkling that maybe the team is starting to break up and get some cracks in it, because Ryan really feels a lot of remorse and regret for leaving his friend who's also dealing with mental health issues, and he feels guilt that he's not there to help his friend as much as he could have. And we kind of get back to the same idea that we've seen in numerous Doctor Who before, of the companions feeling like they need to at some point settle down because they need to live a life that isn't just adventure, but live a life that feels like it's building on something. And that's a natural part of life. And so I like seeing that that's starting to crop up here, but it comes out of Ryan's need to want to help others and be there for his friends and be a part of his friend's life and build his friend's life. I thought that was a really strong core for his character, and also a lot of anxiety that he was dealing with kind of built off of Orphan 55. We kind of got inklings of like his climate change anxiety, which is a very real thing for people of my generation and any generation really, but climate change anxiety is a very real thing that we're terrified that the world is going to end and there's nothing we can do about it. And so I like that kind of being literalized in Ryan, and having Orphan 55, as much as I didn't love that episode, actually have lasting repercussions here in his character, and that very much would be something that he would be thinking about, having literally known that it's very possible that the planet may get destroyed. I also really loved finally getting a little bit more about Yaz. I wish it was kind of rooted in more context. We didn't really know why she was wanting to leave her family, why she was running away, and I wish that kind of gave us a little bit more of a hint of why the case, because I had always thought that she had had a good relationship with her family and friends. It was nice to get that piece, but I just wish we had a little bit more of a context to slot it into to really fully flesh it out and make it feel like it really connects with the Yaz that we know now. But that being said, the scene was effectively done. I really loved that scene with her at the end with the police officer and showing how she got inspired to be a police officer, how she chose to go back to her family, and it was a very emotional moment when she goes back to that officer and gives her the 50 quid that they made the bed off of. That was actually really clever, really fun, and a decent piece of Yaz's backstory that we got here, and I'm kind of glad for it, that it fleshes her out and gives her more depth than we had gotten up until this point. Graham's stuff I didn't really love. It kind of felt repetitious of what we knew last season, of the fact that, you know, he felt guilty about Grace dying, and I did like seeing Grace's cameo here, and his anxiety that his disease may come back up, his cancer may return. Again, a common anxiety for people who have well with cancer, and the cancer's gone into remission. My stepmom has gone through that whole process of getting her cancer removed and having it coming back and having to deal with that, and the mental health that the toll that it takes on that. So I totally liked that, but it just didn't really play in any significant way. It just kind of was told to us and then kind of just petered off at the end of the episode with him talking to the doctor. It felt real for the character, but again, it was one of those scenes and arcs that kind of got lost in the shuffle of a lot of things going on in this episode. And then I also really enjoyed the doctor kind of feeling anxiety about being alone. That's an anxiety that I feel all the time. I am very much someone who feeds off of having people close by me. And I'm not necessarily an extrovert where I feed off of like a large crowd, but I like having close friends. And when I don't have that, I actually get very, very anxious. It is actually a very real problem that I talk about with my therapist. So that actually read very real to me within the doctor. And I like seeing those small bits in her, that she's very anxious when people aren't around. One other negative that I want to quick harp on here is, again, we see in this episode another historical setting and companion show up, the Syrian woman, that kind of doesn't get used for anything. She's just kind of there. And we've seen that a few times throughout the season, especially I think Praxis last episode was the most egregious example of that, where we had characters who were just there. The vlogger, the travel vlogger girl, for example, she just kind of was there along for the ride and didn't really add much to the plot that couldn't have been provided more by another character, another companion, a character that we cared a little bit more about and kind of could have fed into their arcs a little bit more. Here we have the Syrian woman who has the nightmare that does feed into the nightmare that defeats the aliens at the end of the episode, which again was a bit rushed, but I felt like we didn't really need that, and we could have given maybe the nightmare to Yaz or Graham or Ryan, like maybe the monsters from Orphan 55 from Ryan's anxiety show up and defeat the nightmare monster people. That would have at least given us a little bit more tying into his character, and even would have fed into this idea of like, oh, we can take our anxiety about climate change to actually affect change in the real world and actually try and make things better. I think that would have been a much more clever and natural idea that would have fed into a character that we cared about more. So again, we just kind of get this disposable historical setting that I feel is just there to like, we're going to teach you about this historical setting. And I liked learning that there was a mental hospital in Syria that actually took care of people and were very progressive in how they treated mental health way back in ancient times. That's a really cool thing that I now am aware of, and I thank Doctor Who for letting me know that, but I just wish it was integrating these historical settings more into the plot. They're just kind of there to teach me things. And as much as I appreciate being taught cool characters throughout history, have a reason for being there to the actual plot of the episode. And that's just a recurring theme I'm seeing throughout this season, in this series, that there's just random historical settings that don't actually naturally feed into the plot, but are just there to be like, hey, here's a cool historical figure that you like, or you may not know about. But to end on a positive about this episode, I actually loved the technical aspects of this episode almost every level technically was great. Production design was amazing. I loved the lighting, the like blue and red lighting, that set that they were on when they were on the alien ship. Loved the fact the controls were like strings that they could play on. That was just a clever, subtle little detail that I thought was really fun and interesting, and kind of fleshed out the fact that this was a non-human ship. It was a very ethereal, different kind of ship. The smoke effects and all the special effects throughout the episodes, like the planets crashing together, looked very interesting and intriguing and just well done visually. The animation aspect, even though it was a little bit of like telling us the history of these immortal aliens, because it kind of like took us out and kind of made them feel like, yeah, these are immortals, these are something different, and making animation kind of fed into that idea of like, these are not your normal aliens, not your normal things that the Doctor has to deal with. Again, I wish I had played that out a little bit better, but the animation technical aspect of it was great. And then the smoky transitions for the nightmares were all really, really, really interesting and cool and fun and well done, and all the adjectives that I can kind of string along to positively talk about the technical aspects of this episode. But with all that being said, I'd love to hear what you thought about the episode. Let me know down in the comments below. And if you liked this review or want to see more of my reviews about Star Trek, Doctor Who, or discussions of geek and nerd culture, please subscribe to my channel. And if you want to help make these videos even better, please consider giving to my Patreon page or giving a one-time donation to my PayPal. Every little bit helps me pay the bills, buy new equipment, and also pay for a surgery that I'm going to be having in about a month's time. So any monetary help that you can give me would be greatly appreciated. But if you don't subscribe or give to my Patreon, that's a-okay. I'm just glad that you stopped by, and I hope that you, as always, live long and prosper. And special thanks to my commander level and above Patreons: Stefan Schuhart, BBD, Boyd and Marybeth Earl, Michael McGee, Lal Lindley, Wellington Marcus, Munir Amlani, Mari Nekar, and Marika Kuyechin.